What if I told you that the generation who once mocked their kids for being glued to their phones has actually become the most vulnerable victim of the digital epidemic? It is a silent crisis that nobody wants to talk about, but the data is screaming at us from every direction. We are witnessing the total transformation of the Gen X brain in real time, and the results are honestly terrifying. You might think this is just about scrolling through a few too many Facebook memes or getting lost in a YouTube rabbit hole, but the reality is far more sinister than a simple habit. There is a specific psychological trigger being used by tech giants that is literally rewiring the brains of people born between 1965 and 1980. But the real reason why this is happening to Gen X specifically is so disturbing that I can only reveal it at the very end. Welcome to Personality Analysis, where we peel back the layers of the human psyche to see what is really going on beneath the surface of our modern habits. For years, the media has focused entirely on how Gen Z and millennials are being destroyed by social media, but while we were looking at the kids, their parents were quietly falling into a much deeper trap. Gen X was the last generation to grow up with a foot in the analog world, which makes their sudden descent into screen addiction even more shocking and unpredictable. They remember what it was like to wait for a phone call or read a physical map, yet now they are often the ones most susceptible to the rage bait and doom scrolling that defines our current era. This is not just a lapse in judgment, it is a full-blown neurological hijacking that is stealing their peace of mind. To understand why this is happening, we have to look at how dopamine functions in a brain that was not conditioned for instant gratification from birth. Unlike younger generations who were born into the digital noise, Gen X brains were wired for deep focus and delayed rewards during their formative years. This makes them incredibly vulnerable when they finally encounter the hyper-optimized algorithms of 2024. These platforms are designed to exploit the exact neural pathways that Gen X used for problem-solving, turning their natural curiosity into a never-ending loop of craving and consumption. You see them every day, sitting in coffee shops or on their couches, flicking through reels with a vacant look in their eyes that used to be reserved for intense work or hobbyists' passions. It is a total personality shift that is happening under our noses, and it is changing how an entire demographic interacts with reality. Think back to the 90s when the quintessential Gen X trope was the cynical, independent slacker who did not care about corporate trends or social pressure. That independence was their superpower, but today, that same skepticism has been weaponized against them by the very devices in their pockets. Instead of questioning authority, many are now trapped in echo chambers that feed them a constant stream of outrage and misinformation designed to keep them clicking. The energy they once used to build businesses and create iconic culture is being drained away by the blue light of their smartphones at 3 o'clock in the morning. They are losing their ability to sustain long-form conversations or even sit in silence without reaching for a hit of digital stimulation. This is the brain rot no one admits to, because admitting it would mean acknowledging that the strongest generation has finally met its match. It is not just about the time spent on screens, it is about the specific type of content that is rotting the Gen X collective consciousness right now. While younger people are often looking for trends or entertainment, the older demographic is being targeted with content that triggers their deeply ingrained protective instincts and social anxieties. Platforms like Facebook and Twitter have become breeding grounds for a very specific kind of high-stakes drama that feels intensely personal to them. They are being fed a diet of fear and nostalgia, two of the most powerful emotional drivers in existence, which keeps their nervous systems in a state of perpetual high alert. This constant state of fight or flight is physically exhausting their brains, leading to memory lapses, irritability, and a loss of the very nuance that once defined their worldview. It is a tragic irony that the most cynical generation is now the most manipulated. Have you noticed how difficult it has become to have a deep, nuanced conversation with some of the older people in your life lately? This is not just a difference in opinion. It is a measurable decline in cognitive flexibility caused by years of fragmented attention. When you spend hours every single day consuming bite-sized pieces of information, your brain actually loses the ability to process complex, multi-layered narratives. This is why we see so many Gen X individuals getting caught up in conspiracy theories or extremist rhetoric that offers simple answers to complicated problems. Their brains are literally starving for the depth they used to have, but they are trying to fill that void with the digital equivalent of junk food. The result is a thinning of the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logical reasoning and impulse control, which explains the sudden rise in public outbursts. The emotional cost of this digital shift is staggering, and it is creating a lonely void where community used to exist for this age group. Gen X was the generation of the third place, whether it was the local bar, the record store, or the neighborhood backyard barbecue. Now, those physical spaces are being replaced by digital proxies that offer none of the actual chemical benefits of human connection. They are scrolling to feel less alone, but the irony is that the more they scroll, the more isolated they become from their actual families and friends. This isolation breeds a unique kind of resentment that manifests as online aggression or a general sense of bitterness toward the changing world. They feel like they are losing control, so they cling tighter to their screens, hoping the next notification will finally provide the validation or answers they are desperately seeking. The engineers in Silicon Valley are not just guessing. They are using sophisticated biometric data to ensure that Gen X stays engaged for as long as possible. They have discovered that this specific age group responds most aggressively to righteous indignation, which is why your feed is suddenly full of things that make you want to argue with strangers. These algorithms are fine-tuned to keep you in a state of moral superiority, making you feel like you are the only one who sees the truth while everyone else is blind. This creates a powerful hit of neurochemicals that is as addictive as any drug on the street, and it is being delivered through the glass in your hand. The tech giants know that if they can keep Gen X angry, they can keep them active, and that activity translates directly into billions of dollars in advertising revenue. When we compare the digital habits of Gen X to Gen Z, we see a fascinating and disturbing divergence in how their brains handle the stress of the internet. Gen Z was born into the chaos, so they have developed a sort of natural immunity or at least a high tolerance for the noise and the nonsense. They know when they are being sold something, and they often treat the internet with a healthy dose of irony and detachment. Gen X, however, lacks that built-in digital filter because they spent 30 years believing that what they read or saw in media was generally curated and verified. They are bringing analog trust into a digital world of deception, and it is causing a massive internal conflict that they do not have the tools to resolve. This mismatch between their traditional values and the digital reality is what leads to intense frustration. Now, it is time to reveal that disturbing secret I mentioned at the start of this video, and it is something that will change how you look at your phone. Recent neurological research has uncovered that Gen X brains, because they transitioned into digital life later, are experiencing a unique form of neural pruning that is usually only seen in early childhood or extreme trauma. Essentially, the brain is deleting its older, more complex pathways for critical thinking to make room for the high-speed processing required by modern apps. This is not just a habit, it is a physical restructuring of the brain that makes it nearly impossible to return to the way things were before the smartphone era. The tech companies have known about this plasticity window for years and have intentionally designed their interfaces to trigger this permanent shift. They are literally rewriting the hardware of a generation. This realization is heavy, but knowing the truth is the first step toward reclaiming your mind from the clutches of the algorithm. We are at a crossroads where we must decide if we will remain passive consumers or if we will fight to keep the depth and independence that once defined us. The brain rot is real, but it is not inevitable if you start setting boundaries and reconnecting with the physical world that actually matters. If you found this analysis eye-opening and you want to be part of the group that stays awake while everyone else is drifting into the digital fog, then you know exactly what to do. Join the 1% of viewers who are brave enough to face the truth by hitting that subscribe button right now. Let's keep exploring the hidden corners of the human mind together before the screens take everything we have left.